What's going on YouTube? Earth Power here.
CVH here.
And we've got a new kind of, well not new, but a different kind of video for you. We're going to go over the basic archetype of Rush. We're probably going to do a couple of these and put them on both channels, so definitely check out this guy's channel.
Links.
Just search CVH Music or
click down there.
Christian Van Hoos or look at his link down below and you'll find his channel. But what we're basically going to do for the next, I guess, however long, is talk about Rush and I guess the way that it's going to, or I guess sort of where it's going to find itself in Shattered meta, Shattered Alliance meta.
And sort of compared to like the present Rush and the past Rush we might have seen.
Right,
Guess, yeah.
and just I guess where and how it can evolve based on the preview cards we've gotten so far.
Yeah, which aren't a whole lot, but which are some ideas so far.
Yeah, but we're getting more, and then we've heard that Aggression and Rush are going to get a ton of toys to play with in the new set, so...
As is good types of decks
yes.
to have a thrive in the meta.
Indeed. So, I guess the first point of discussion is, I guess we'll talk about Mono Fire, and where it finds itself now versus, I guess, where it might find itself. With the addition of, we haven't really seen any new preview cards for Mono Fire.
We really haven't.
But we've seen some cool multi-civ cards, but we'll get into those in a minute. But Mono Fire,
everyone associates Fire with Rush, like...
Yeah.
Most people, you know, you're running Rush, you're probably running Fire. Has been the thought process for many months.
Yeah, up until, right at the championship when Mono Light was introduced. Shoutouts to Nate Bond for the build, and shoutouts to this guy for getting third. And
shoutouts to this guy for getting ninth. Tears.
Yeah, tears.
But
what are you gonna do?
About like Mono Fire, people like long have been combining Fire with another civilization. Like Fire Light was a thing, Fire Water was a thing with Dracons and Number of Neurons. Even Fire Dark with Shapeshifter Scared Orbital was tried out, and you know they're all pretty successful, I guess. People mostly just gravitated to Mono Fire though because it actually does have a lot of support. There's a lot of evolutions you can run if you run a dedicated build like Mono Fire with no other civilizations clouding it up.
And you get access to every fast attacker. So
you get instead of Draglight you can run Dracon Warchief, which is kind of big for its 4 cost up to 5,000 when it attacks, so that's pretty crucial.
We're putting cards up here the whole time, so shoutouts to that.
Look, so I guess we talk about the evolutions now, right? Because they're pretty much the reason to run Mono Fire.
Yeah, Mono Fire sort of revolves around, and it's weird because, you know, in the past, at least my experience with Rush decks from the previous game of Duel Masters into this one, like, you never really played, evolutions didn't play as big of a role as they have, and evolutions have really, I guess, guided how Rush decks get made in our meta, and Kaijudo in general. Like, Rush decks really didn't become a thing until they introduced the Dracon evolutions, and even Mono Light, which we'll get into in a little bit, again, just are based off its evolutions, and they run...
Yeah, they just fit so onto the curve. You
almost a fourth of the deck. Yeah. Are made up by evolutions.
So the first one we got with Evo Fury for Dracons was Laser Arm Dracon.
Boom.
You can see right there. It was Double Breaker for level 3, so we obviously knew Dracon was a thing. People had tried to build Dracon decks before. You could have seen videos with Gorby running Fire and Water. But, you know, it lacked something, clearly. And this card gave it like a great turn 3 play to just go into shields, and it stole many games, obviously.
I think before that, the Rush decks pre-Evo were Fire Nature, generally.
No, there were some Fire Water, but they were more like tempo, I think.
Right.
Yeah, well, it was like even just Seneschal, Rusalka, madness.
Right, but nothing super fast. Like, we still didn't have that turn 1, turn 2, turn 3 progression to where you could win on turn 4. We didn't. That wasn't a thing yet, unless you just top the Blaze Belcher, and then we didn't have a turn 3 fast attacker.
You had to get incredibly lucky, and even when you got lucky, it wasn't like you're playing things on the right turns, but they're not good things, so like one good play from your opponent will probably just ruin the whole strategy.
Yeah.
But you drop a Laser Arm, and that's a good, sort of hard-to-answer card. You know, you got Bone Blades, and very few other things, at the time especially, could answer it.
Nothing can swing over it. Like, that's
Emperor
huge.
and Neuron could.
Well, that early, yeah. And other tempo-based decks, but it's definitely like a 3-mana Double Breaker that was huge was awesome, and then the going to 6 out of power let it even run over Neurons if you drop that on opposing Neurons. So Rush sort of had a weird, I guess, niche in like I guess that current meta, like it could compete with tempo and not necessarily do rushy things, but like attack over stuff and still get stuff done. It wasn't all, I summon this guy and lose. Like, it could still battle back from things.
I'm personally not a huge fan of its matchup to Tempo. I think Tempo is just generally going to win the majority of the time.
Yeah.
But when Rush really started to shine was when Dragon Strike came out and Light Water Dark Control took over the meta, because Tempo sort of lost to, because the Tempo at the time just couldn't really deal with Andromeda to the extent it needed to be dealt with.
Nope.
So Control took over the meta, and like the main answer to Control at the time was really Rush, and Monofire got some more tools for Dragon Strike when they go into the next evolution. Might have gotten. Or?
Yeah, well, we got Jet Thrust, Darter, the 3-mana. We got our 3-mana 1,000 power fast attacker. And then we got the cheap Evo bait, the Dracon, Jet Flame. No,
that came out in Evo. We got Burn Claw and Bronca.
Burn Claw and Bronca, yep, as well. But we got, what was the 1-drop called?
We didn't get any 1-drop.
We did get the 1-drop. The 1-drop came out and that's it.
Jet Flame came out in Dragon Strike? I'm pretty sure it came out in Evo, because the Evo Fury had 1-drop for every race.
Did it?
Yeah, Prickleback, Cyber Sprite, Jet Flame.
No, maybe it came out in Evo. I don't know.
Chasm, yeah, it came out.
But yeah, we got Bronca and Burn Claw. Exactly. So, Bronca. There it is. And then Burn Claw.
Okay.
Put your hands back here. But, yeah, this guy, God, the camera is awful for me right now. I just can't get it right.
I'm just going to point over here.
Right. Boom. But, Burn Claw was another 3-mana evolution. It had a body that was super solid. Like, that 5,000 power just set it, like, right there to where it was just really difficult to deal with. Like, they either had to bump with, Heal Flames if it was like a control variant or a tempo variant running Heal Flame. They had to bump with it. They couldn't just outright kill it like they could with Laser Arm. And then the fact that it got a Burn Claw from the deck, or not a Burn Claw, but a Bronca from the deck, like, and put it straight on the board. So it was a 3-mana, 5,000 power beast of an Evo, and then drop another card on top of that. It was like,
the great thing about this card is that you can drop this on turn 3 instead of whatever else you might drop on turn 3. You don't get an additional attacker if you're evolving it on something that could already attack, but you get some additional on the field that you can potentially evolve next turn onto Laser Arm Dracon or anything else. You know, if you're short on Dracons, it just gives you another thing to use, and it's a 5,000 power beat stick, which is, like you said, hard to deal with.
Yeah, because, again, going back to what we said in the beginning, like, Rush found its way into this meta with evolutions. It's weird to think about that you'd run cards in a deck that would only work with other cards in Rush. Like, you want something, I guess, technically more consistent, something that you can consistently drop on turn 1 and a turn 2 follow-up, and then a turn 3 either fast attacker or just something big on its own right without losing the board presence of your turn 1 and turn 2 creature. But these evolutions, like, in their own way, yeah, just either Burn Claw drops another creature, so you get that +1 there on board, or you drop Laser on, which is a double breaker.
It's not +1 because you're getting
+1 on board.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Like, Rush is all about board presence. Like, it never has a plus in its hand ever. Ideally, you should be just putting the pressure on board. Yeah, committing on board. But Laser Arm, and again, gives you a double breaker on turn 3, which is something Rush never really saw. Like, it's something you wouldn't really think about. Like, I'm going to evolve into this, and then technically it still have the same creature, like 2 for 1 on a creature, but it's a double breaker now. That's huge.
And it was just generally cool to see Burn Claw because it's the first surge effect to the field we finally got. Like, we hadn't seen those before in the game.
Yeah.
We're seeing them in the future with Cyber Scamp, which we'll talk about in a minute probably, but this card is just kind of groundbreaking in that respect.
Yeah.
It's very cool.
And again, the 5,000 power body was just very, it was warm welcomed. I guess if that's a word or verb. I don't know how I just use that
It
word.
was welcomed warmly.
Well, there you go.
It's a good card.
It's a good card. Right. We'll leave it at that.
Yeah, it wins games sort of.
But that was Dragon Strike.
Yeah, and then Rush could just have a good matchup to Greed Dragons too, which focused more on his control matchup with the late game, and as long as it didn't hit the Nutty Blasts, it's going there.
Yep. And we got the 4 mana, the 4 for 3, the War Chief. The Dracon War Chief and Dragon Strike as well, if I'm not mistaken.
You're mistaken yet again, Carl, because we got the Silver Fist and the Reef Gladiator and all those Civ-based cards that came out in Evo. Yeah.
Okay, well, there you go.
We just got Burn Claw and Bronca. So it's okay, because the meta became more favorable, so it feels like we got more.
I guess what I'm trying to move into now is where I was trying to go with that transition was, like, talking about War Chief, was as Clash came out, like, we still saw the modifiers. I mean, obviously, you guys saw what happened at the KMCs. Monofire was a pain in the neck. Like, nobody ever wanted to play against it. Nobody almost tested against it. And as much as everyone hated it, like, it still didn't do the greatest. It won, I think, 2 or 3 of the 24 KMCs.
We got a few invites.
At least 2, yeah. And, I mean, it topped a considerable amount of times.
I want to talk about some trends that we saw. from Patrick Van something.
Landing,
Yeah, you and because he ran like the mono fire deck in Florida, and like he had teched it out extremely hard against like the mirror match. He ran like 12 shield blasts. I think he ran like Triple Barrage, Tornado Flames, all that. And that's something that wasn't really seen a lot. And also a card that he ran that we sort of doubted, I think, here was a Scaled Impaler.
Yes. Well, that's with Clash. When Clash came out.
Well, this is he won after Clash, obviously.
Right. But yeah, that evolution, like everybody saw it. It was like 2 mana, 4,000 power, can't be attacked. It was like, it was just it felt underwhelming compared to Burn Claw and Laser Arm because of just the raw power that they had.
Laser Arm's double raking, so it sort of adds an additional attacker in a sense because you're breaking an additional shield. Burn Claw is cool because it replaces itself on board. You're not losing card advantage. We're like, Scaled Impaler is cool, but you're basically just losing card advantage. And like Jet Flame to Scale is like okay.
Yeah.
But it's easy to underestimate how hard this card to deal with is if you don't have a Strider or Bone Blades.
Right,
it just gets out of hand.
And that's the crazy thing too, because as Clash came out, like the cards we gravitated to immediately were cards like Aqua Strider, 2 mana, 4,000 power blocker, like great against Rush, and then Swordhorn, like 3 for 5,500. It's huge, and it deals with Rush cards. So Rush needed a way to deal with the Swordhorn and not get revenged by either other blockers or other evolutions that could come down, like the Neuron, like just other tempo-y cards. Like you couldn't Homunculon and tap it down and kill it with something. Like you had to have the hard removal for it.
Which is kind of rare in like tempo-based decks and other rush strategies. For the Scaled Impaler can just take over an entire game, pretty much.
Yeah, they drop it on turn 2, and tempo, or at least most tempos at the time, outside of bouncing it, had 0 answers to it.
You just gotta hope for that root trap.
Yeah.
Whatever you might be running.
Exactly. Like the hard removal that you rarely ran. Mm-hmm. So
it's cool. Like, it's nice to see an evolution doesn't replace itself. Or like it's not obviously good, but then it is really good in actual practice. It was nice to see. I was happy. I'm always happy when cards underwhelm me and then they
kind of blow up. Yeah,
they become better. Or not even blow up, but just they're good.
Right. And that's
nice to see.
And that's the other thing, like again, going back to everything we said so far, like Rush just continuously found itself in a way that evolutions defined it, like Scaled Impaler, Burn Claw, and Laser Arm. And in most decks, most deck lists that you saw, they were running 3 of each evolution. So that's 9 cards in a 40-card deck. Like, you just think that on paper it'd be bad, but the role that these cards played were so huge that you just had to run them. Like, they were that good for Rush. So, and then I guess late, it was after the KMCs and early championships, Mono Light was happened upon by our local member, Nate Bond. Mm-hmm. And
it started out actually with a small nature section, and I guess slightly less rushy. It ran 3 Swordhorn, 3 Homunculon on the blaster, but I never really liked that when I was playing with it, and Nate had done a lot of testing the week prior to the championship, and I talked to him the day before, and he told me he actually wound up taking it out, and I had realized, I was like, wow, I can't believe I didn't see that before. Like, I just took him out for Shock and Oz and Halons.
Yeah, Shock and Oz that we weren't running.
Incredible cards that were just overlooked in the first build.
Yeah, because, I mean, you got to think if you draw... Like, progressions are so crucial in Rush. Like, you have to play your turn 1, play your turn 2, and play your turn 3. And with those 6 multi-civ cards...
If you open with one of them, you have to put it down.
It has to go down immediately, and then if you need a mana card outside of your progression and it's a multi-civ, you bone yourself out of that turn. And Light focuses on getting to turn 4 so you can drop its evolutions like Sparkblade and Keeper of Walls.
It seems really bad now that we sit back and talk about it, like the 6-card Aegis section. But, first drafts, there were problems that were noticed, and it performed well enough for him to test it further, so props to that. I'm glad he fixed it up a little bit.
Right. And it's so interesting to think about, because you think about what Mono Light is, like the deck that you ran in championships, and the only card, I think, no, there were 2. I guess Rody Gale and Keeper of Walls are the only 2 Clash cards in it. Am I right? Shimmerwing.
But it's important because it's a 2-drop.
Right. So Containment Field. So, but even then, some people are taking Containment Field out for the one that taps 2.
If they're wrong, that's another discussion.
Right. But anyways, but Mono Light, it's crazy that no one really tested it before Clash, and I guess like it was discovered so late in the meta for Clash that it's just like. I don't know. To me, that's weird. I don't know why we didn't happen upon that. Like,
because we had Sparkblade Protector for a while.
Right.
And Alon's obviously ran in a few things, I guess, back in the day, but...
Yeah, it was like an answer to Sabretooth and all that.
Sparkblade.
Problem card.
I understand the Evo Fury meta, because Sabretooth would have just been bigger than a lot of things. But, in the Dragon Strike meta, it's interesting to think what would have happened if people started building Mono Light instead of Mono Fire. Would it have done as well? Would it have maybe taken the top spot of the KMCs?
Right. Yeah.
But Keeper of Laws helps a lot. There it is, right there.
Yeah,
maybe there's Keeper of Laws. It's pretty good.
Cards keep getting thrown up here that we're not really talking about, but they're there, so
yeah,
enjoy that.
Nah, it's a Keeper of Laws though, and that's a pretty busted card.
That card. I previewed it and I just didn't do it enough justice. I feel like I should have overhyped it, but
I would skip creature drops just to hold on to the Laws. Like I'd have a blind to be like to play raw, or I could just put in mana and have a Sparkblade and Laws in my hand, play Laws the next turn, and like just. Puts them on edge. You can't answer that.
It's crazy to think about in Rush because we addressed how well it does in the control mirrors. Like, controls drop that card against each other and all of a sudden it's just a weird battle that you have to either deal with laws or just try to play around it. It's just really awkward and annoying. And then Tempo, it's obviously an amazing card because you're dropping bounce progressions on top of laws and just disruption is all over the place, and the only way to deal with it is to play spells and you draw cards, and Tempo wins with that card against control. But then you think about it and putting it in Rush, like ideally if you've hit a perfect progression, you've got your turn 1, your turn 2, your turn 3 play. Those are all creatures. I'm getting a call and it's late.
You should learn how to turn that phone off.
But you ideally have your turn 1, your turn 2, your turn 3 plays. So that's 3 creatures on board, and then you drop Laws. All of a sudden, Laws is like near impossible to deal with, at least in like tempo decks and mid-range and controls, like
which is every other thing in the meta.
Which is every other thing. Like you normally
Laws is kind of a pain in the
right. You're not dropping that many creatures in combination with Laws, at least early games. So there's usually you can piercing to bounce it, tap it. Sure, your opponent gets to draw a card, but you deal with that Laws.
Yeah, it's in the mirror.
And then in tempo too, like I mean you deal with it, like there's not
sure you might eat the minus with the bone blades, but at least it's gone.
Right.
Like it's hard enough as a control player, I can attest to it being hard enough to deal with an opposing Keeper of Laws with half of my deck being spells. It's just like almost impossible to play around if I can't get rid of it immediately. And it's even harder to play around if like half my deck is spells and they're beating me down in shields, like turns on end with like I don't even have time anymore to deal with it. Like I have to deal with it, but I don't have time because I'm losing shields at a rapid rate, and it's just going to win the game.
And your shield blasts, which are ideally meant to be there to deal with Rush, all of a sudden you're eating -1s and they're drawing more.
Like I live for the turn, but then I know they have 3 cards in hand all of a sudden. And
right.
I'm just gonna.
Normally you shield blast a Rush deck, like you shield blast Mono Fire, and all of a sudden they're out of the hand and out of the field. You shield blast Mono Light with Keeper on board, and like the train just keeps rolling. It's just
like you get subpar starts very rarely with Mono White, but when you do, if you have a Laws, it can usually just be okay. You play Laws, and
I think you played a local, right, where he dropped double Laws, like you had him at a supreme minus, and then Laws back to back.
That actually happened against me. I just lost the game. But people like mesmerize you, and it doesn't even matter. They might, if they logo scan, you just win the game.
Right. It's crazy what Laws did, and then just Mono Light in general, like becoming a Rush deck, like it's
cool.
It's crazy, like, and that we found it so late too in cards like Shock and all, which
Spencer Swan discovered that card back in the day, back in the Dojo meta.
Right.
That was a year ago.
Yeah, it's just crazy to think that these cards are just overlooked. Like it just shows that continuous testing and just digging through and finding just these hidden treasures. Like they're always there.
Keeper of Laws was actually found to be good in Rush by fellow ARG writer Zach Hine, who built Red White Shame, I guess he called it, just Firelight Rush. And we found out it was kind of inconsistent because we were saying monosivs have been the way right now. It's been the move, but when it won. It was usually because of Keeper of Laws. You should really turn that off.
I was just excited.
Like, Keeper of Laws is just winning so many games. Like, you just drop Laws and it's just, there's the game. I guess we can talk about other variants here.
I guess, yeah, that leads us, into, the other variants, and then,
So I want to mention Fire Dark.
Yeah, Fire Dark. I guess we can talk about that. We tested it. I guess it was a little bit. It was probably, I think, South Carolina for us, the beginning of June, right after, like, as soon as Clash dropped, like, we got the evolution, the
Shapeshifter Scared Orbital. And we saw huge potential.
Yeah.
Which is still there.
Like, it was just like, it was, on paper it seemed like a card that you just could not get rid of. Like, and that would come down every turn no matter what. It was like a Heal of Flame that stayed on board. It was beautiful, and even if they killed it, it goes back to your hand.
The idea is that you drop it on a 1-drop like a Jet Flame Bodyguard or a Marrow Ooze or Gigabolver in Fire Dark.
Yeah,
you
you
go
have
into
access
the attack.
to so many 1-drops in Fire Dark.
They Bone Blades you in their ideal scenario. You lose the 1-drop, but Shapeshifter goes back to your hand, you draw another 1 or 2-drop, and you're able to do that turn after turn after turn, and hopefully just win the game before they can...
And that 5,000 power is bigger than almost anything they can drop until turn 6, and even if they bounce with it with something else, like, I think Swordhorn was the only card that could deal with it before turn 6 effectively, and even then, like, it would just...
Like, they're just going to have to eat it every turn, you know?
Yeah, so... And then with cards, like, it had the support of all the other multi-civ card, Lizard Skin Puppet.
Yeah, and Baron Burnfingers, which is kind of cool.
Baron Buttfingers.
I got a Shield Blasted Common Missile when I killed a Baron Burnfingers once. It was really depressing because it was only Shield Blast Spencer ran, but...
But yeah, I mean, the deck was very interesting, and I guess it deserves more play than we gave it, because we tested it for South Carolina. We decided not to run it. Everyone decided against it. I mean, it was just like a rush deck that we thought would be the most prevalent, and then Mono Fire just kind of took off after that.
But we had it built, and it did win some test games.
Yeah.
For sure.
Because Shapeshifter is just pretty cool.
It does get inconsistent hands, though. With the multi-cids, you're bound to get them eventually. It happens at, like, a very tiny percentage higher than you get with, like, a mono-cid deck.
And the dark cards, I mean, honestly, like, the early turn dark cards, Gigabolver and Marrow Ooze on its own right, like, don't really do too much for you outside of be evolution bait for Shapeshifter, so they were kind of dead cards. And if you had them, going in with them was just awkward, to say the least.
They're cheap, but they're not a true 1-drop attacker. Because you don't really want to attack on turn 2.
And you had Jet Flame, or Jet Thrust. I get that card wrong. What is that name? The 1-drop.
Jet Flame Bodyguard.
Jet Flame Bodyguard. I know it's Jet something, and I won't keep calling it the fast attacker. But Jet Flame Bodyguard was just, I mean, you couldn't even swing with it, so... And I don't even think, did you run the laser arms in that deck?
The laser arms were run. I think burn claws were not.
Those were avoided. So I mean, it was awkward to have all those 9 1-drops that couldn't really.
Yeah, Scaled Impaler was just avoided, which is a shame because Scaled Impaler shuts down that deck. I think if you don't get Bone Blades randomly, like against the Rushmere, it's just your Shapeshifter is going to attack me because it can't attack my Scaled Impaler, and it's not as fast as my Scaled Impaler.
And in a match you'll see tomorrow, you'll see how Scaled Impaler fares against Mono Light as well, just to hit on that topic real quick. Like,
my one saving grace is that I had blockers.
Mono Light's all the major evolutions are blockers, and
well, not Halen, but yeah.
Well, not Halen.
It has 12 blockers total. That's a lot.
But yeah, like the evolutions are huge, so Scaled Impaler just kind of sits there and looks bad. So not much you can do there. And then I guess the other variants. Nature really hasn't seen any play in Rush at all, hardly. It had Prickleback, which was cool for a time. Like I said, Fire Nature saw play, I guess, early or late Dojo and in and out of Rise meta.
Yeah, I mean,
and then after Evo Fury came out,
Magris came out in Rise, right? It wasn't out in Dojo, so
Magris came out in.
It came out in Rise because Dojo didn't have light cards.
Yeah, it came out in Rise.
Did Dojo have light cards?
Dojo had light cards. Dojo.
Yeah,
TBR was when we didn't get light. We didn't have light for like a month.
I feel like it was just obviously that Nature was the best one for like a little bit. But back then there was only 2 decks.
Yep.
It's like Fire Nature or Water Dark.
Even then with Prickleback, it wasn't enough to give Nature, I guess, an edge in Rush.
It didn't stick around because Prickleback found its own home in different decks like Saberbolt, because Saberbolt, like Sabertooth as an evolution, isn't about speed, it's about controlling the pace of your mana.
Right, and then they kill it and all of a sudden you're dropping big fatties. So, and then Fire Nature, or Fire Water, which I actually ran for, I guess, a local or 2, and
Gorby loved that deck for sure.
Yeah, and I liked it too. I even saw it get played at Gen Con. The guy who played me in finals for one of the Uncut Sheets was running Fire Water, and I guess basically his deck list was all the Dracons with Laser Arm and Burn Claw, and then all the Water Cyberlords with Neuron and Dendrite, and it was like an even split 20-20. And it was
pretty
cool. Yeah, it was just a really solid deck and gave Bugs a ton of problems. I think we went to game 3 and I barely pulled it out.
It's important to note how good of a rush card Neuron is. I guess just a really good card.
Yeah, I mean, you think about like what Loss does for your hand. Neuron's doing that while breaking shields. Like, your opponent can't play around that. That card's drawing you cards when it hits board. So
and the possibility is always there for like a double Neuron madness. You turn 3 Neuron, turn 4 Sprite Neuron or something.
You get your opponent out of shields and all of a sudden they need Andro, or you stand a chance at winning the game until they get more shields. Like if they have shields, they can have game at any moment, no matter how many blockers you have on board. That's nuts to think about.
Crazy stuff.
And Dendrite's huge. So, and when I played the deck, I think I ran the first one with a dragon kind of overtone. It was just like Neuron tempo into dragons.
And that was weird.
And then I tried the that same version, but with like Rusalkas, and which he wasn't running at Gen Con. It was weird.
That is weird.
I told him to run Rusalka. But
it's a good thing to tell him.
Yeah, he was running, or I ran just like the Neuron line with the bounce and Rusalka, and then the laser arm line. And this was before, I think it was before Burnclaw. So, and that the deck does work. I mean, Rush is always going to do what Rush does if you build it that way, because I mean the progressions are just there. It's pretty obvious to play your first 4 turns, and then after that it's just hope you have enough pressure on board to win or lose.
Hope you don't hit bottle in the Andromeda.
Hope you don't hit bottle in the Andromeda. But what are you going to do about that? That's another topic entirely.
Scoop!
Scoop! We scoop!
That's really bad impersonation, but yeah, we got it.
It's right there.
Is it?
Yep. Is it? It's been here the whole time. Stank face.
I hate bottle.
But, moving on, I guess, from Clash now that we've talked about all the deck types, what multi-civs we've seen so far for Shattered Alliance, and I guess what this set could do for Rush.
Even a few things that are multi-civs that are pretty nuts for Rush variants.
I think the first one on my mind right now is the Blitzer mech. Is that
Blitzer mech Falcora.
Blitzer mech Falcora.
God, I hope I'm right.
Yeah, maybe. It's F something.
It's right there. So.
Yeah, there it is. But, I mean, this guy, 4 mana, 2,500, you guys are reading it. It's got a Shock and Awe effect.
It does.
It's Firelight, so I mean, it's kind of forcing, I guess, Rush decks to again start playing around with the idea of running 2 civs, since we're just kind of on that mono train right now, either mono fire or mono light.
Because Shock and Awe you can play around, sort of. Like, you see it on the board, you have a turn to get rid of it or get rid of whatever else they might have, but this guy just sort of comes out of nowhere, and it does what it does.
Yeah, fast attacker as well, so I mean, you drop it, you tap something, and it just swings in, it negates. Jerry Thompson did an article on it, by the way. Hey, look at Jerry Thompson.
Why are you putting a link to his face?
I don't know, because his face is right there.
Well, hi Jerry, how's it going?
But Jerry Thompson did an article on Kaijudo.com about this card. He's the one who previewed it originally, and he was talking about it. It just negates like the Gloom Hollow, which is crazy, which is what Shock and All was originally put in Mono Light to do.
It negated Grudge Weaver, that was a big one for me.
Yeah, Grudge Weaver, just all the blockers that can't swing over it. So you drop this guy, and all of a sudden they just have dead cards on board in Gloom Hollow. And
it's important to think too, with this being a fast attacker, you get control down to 0 shields, or any deck down to 0 shields, and they drop 1 blocker. All of a sudden they're not safe from your top deck, so you can just top this guy, fast attack, tap their blocker, and go for game. Yeah. It's over.
And again, like, you're losing the fast attacker and Dracon Warchief with the mono fire, but with by combining the 2 civs, light and fire, which seem to be the best 2 rush the best 2 rush decks right now, you combine them, you take the best cards from each of them, throw in Blitzer mech, and
you get this monstrosity.
You get this fast attacker that you wanted with mono fire, and you get the tap ability that you wanted with light, and yeah, it's great. It's great. It's great. It's fantastic. So this card has potential to do a lot of work in Rush and on the meta in general when Shatter comes out. I think it's going to be one of the cards we see a lot of right out of the gate, and then depending on how it does from there, I mean, we'll probably see it pretty consistently for the run of KMCs.
I would assume so.
I wouldn't be surprised to see it in
it's probably the best barrier they've spoiled so far, unless I'm wrong, but it's the one that it stands out to me the most.
Yeah, definitely.
For sure. And for light, since we're talking about light, Blinder Beetle Prime.
Yes. This guy, just completely replacing Halon right now.
Yeah, I mean, we wanted to run Halon because it's another double breaker, fast attacker because it's an evolution, but it's just like the power was only relevant when I was losing.
Right.
So
right, you wanted it to deal with Hive Queen when it came out because that card was a problem card. I mean, it still is in the meta currently, but Rush sort of has an edge on bugs anyways, so Halon was just there to force Hive Queens into awkward situations. But
Bobby Break tapped my Rody Gale, and then I evolved Halon onto it tapped, so I wouldn't die. So I didn't die that turn, my Halon didn't die, but it was pretty obvious when I had to do that play that I was going to lose that game.
Right.
That's sort of a last ditch effort, and usually it's an okay card in the offensive, obviously, but Blinder Beetle Prime is just...
This card's so much better. I mean, tapping something when it comes into play, and then tapping something when it attacks, I mean, you're getting 2 taps on your turn. It's an evolution. It can attack that turn. Mm-hmm. So you're tapping 2 cards immediately when it comes into play, and then every turn that the last on board after that, it's got Shock and Awe effect and Blitzer Mech tech, or Blitzer Mech thing ability,
Yeah,
and
so
it's just like there's so much tap going on that it really just puts controls and tempo decks on
controls
field.
like, sweet, my favorite turn 5 play, Gloom Hollow Strider, and they're like, nope, Blind Beetle Prime. They're all tapped.
And I know the card's right there, but it's 5 mana?
It's 5 for 6.
5 for 6, that's too crazy. Like, God,
Pretty good. So if you think White Weenie, Mono Light Rush, whatever you want to call it, is going away, you might want to keep it in your testing gauntlet.
this card is sticking around with the addition of Blitzer Mech, and
even if it gets nothing else in the
guy.
set, this guy is just
Yeah.
Mono Light, Light Fire, 2 things to look out for.
And I mean, I can even see this card being used in other decks as well. And I mean, we'll get into that in future sections. But this card, really good rare to come out of this set so far, and definitely one of my favorites.
Let's talk about water. I want to talk about water.
Water.
I want to talk about
Sure.
water.
Why don't we transition with, real quick, just the Dual Day promo that's coming out. Something Walker Kaylee.
Yeah, I don't know if that card's that good.
It's interesting. It's the Fire of Water. Obviously, you've seen it right there. The Dual Day promo that we're getting. I always point. No, I don't. Well,
Where are you pointing?
I'm pointing. But Kaylee, fast attacker, and every time it dies, it goes back to your hand, and it's 3 for 1,000, and just a cool card.
Pardon me.
He's laptopping. But I think this card has viability. If water becomes a thing for Rush.
I mean, if you keep lying about the fact it has viability, because it doesn't really have fast attacker though.
I thought it had fast attacker.
No, it can only attack type creatures that turn out as a battle zone.
Oh, well, that's
not
what I'm
good.
getting at.
Yeah,
Okay.
it just revenge kills things.
Okay. So, but interesting that it has power attack.
Mini Tatsurion from the...
Yeah, power attack +2?
Yeah.
Okay, so
We don't know what these cards
not
do,
great.
we're just sort of freeballing it.
Yeah. I need to start paying more attention, but
We don't
I
play
guess-
Kaijudo.
School's been rough the past week, guys.
Oh, that's an excuse, isn't it?
No, it is. Oh, I'm making excuses.
Oh, God.
Oh.
Dolphin says no excuses.
But this card, I think, might find... I think people are going to play it.
What a sentence that was.
What?
This card might find.
Yeah, I think this card will see play when it comes out, and especially if water becomes a thing for Rush with the card that I know you want to talk about next. But if fire finds its way into that, I guess, combination with water, then I definitely think people are going to try to play Kaylee, just because the bounce back to the hand is going to be really useful and just really annoying for like control decks and tempo decks to deal with. But with water, on the note of water, the card you want to talk about,
Saga's Camp.
this card's cool.
Yeah,
This card's really cool.
Harkens back to when Burnclaw was released and we saw that first search to battle zone effect.
Yep.
And this guy is sort of like the keep your wall spellbait scenario. Punishes control players from doing what control does.
Right.
For doing what control does. So like, you think about it in the context of your Breaking Shield, they hit Bone Blades and it replaces itself, which is pretty nuts. Because it gives you something that stays on the field that can still be evolved in future Neurons or Dendrite scenarios.
Right. And I like this card. Just to, I guess, cut you off for a second and then put you back on track. It's like I like this guy like in a Rush idea, but talking about it for tempo, I think is where this card's probably going to find its place.
Oh yeah.
And that's, I think, what you're about to talk about is just like you drop this guy on turn 2, and then if you have the Neuron for it, like even if you don't have the Neuron for it, like if they turn 3 and try to, I think what you were about to speak about is mesmerizing you.
Yeah.
Try to mesmerize
This works
the
in control or Rush, because like you're against Rush and you want to get rid of Heal Flames in a Fire Water sort of deal, or any evolution they might drop. They mesmerize you, and all of a sudden there's 2 of them on the field, and they wasted their turn playing mesmerize. So they really they did -1 there, because you both lost a card in hand, and you're getting field presence for free.
and you're
which
still
is-
going to drop something on turn 4 anyways.
Yeah, or
So,
turn 3. Right?
yeah.
You have like
Regardless.
you have 3 things on turn 2, and it's kind of absurd usually, because you didn't have to waste card advantage because they're just mesmerizing and you're getting free searches.
Yeah, it's crazy to think about too if you had the turn 1 play, even if they went first.
Yeah,
Like,
it's one of those cards. Actually, this is an issue for Burnclaw, but like say you have all 3, you played 1 for mana, you summon 1 on the field, and you have the 3rd one in your hand. It's important to not let that show, because it might dissuade them from playing their spells.
right.
Yeah.
Don't pout, I guess, if you will.
Do not make it seem like, oh, I'm just summoning a Cyrus Scamp, no point for this card, and then you're happy this Scamp.
But
Just
that's
Secret.
getting back into you've written articles on that.
Maybe, I don't know.
I don't know.
Just so I forget.
I'm just saying, just being that you don't. If I have drawn all of my shield blasts in my opening hand.
You only run at 5, so that kind of sucks.
Right. Well, I'm just saying, if I have a hand of all shield blasts and it's like all 3 terror pits and something else, I'm not going to let my opponent know that. You know, I'm gonna
I wish these were down there.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you. That means I get to do whatever I want now. I don't have
You're
to
going to
play.
have a horrible early game.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to give your opponent that information, because otherwise, at that point, you really are just going to lose if you weren't already based on the hand. But,
Unless they got some god-awful opening of like 3 Tritonus or something.
right. In which case, your terror pit's looking pretty good. But yeah, that's a different topic entirely. But I think
relevant nonetheless.
Yes. But I think that that almost wraps us up for.
I think so.
For what Rush is going to see in Shattered. Stay tuned. I mean, we've got 2 weeks until the set comes out. I'm sure we'll get more previews leading up to that. If you guys didn't see my preview video for Wild Strider Ramnoth, definitely go check that video out. Put it out, I guess, on Friday. The blooper reel's up. It's the first video after the blooper reel, so definitely go back and check that out if you haven't seen that already. It's probably one of the better ones, if not one of the best so far. It's just enjoyable. Like, I think with the first blooper reel, just talking about blooper reels real quick, we're going to ramble
History
for a
of Russian
second.
blooper reels.
Yeah, Russian blooper.
The video's over, guys. You can exit out if you want, but we're just going to talk for a while, so
we're
Peach.
Talk for a couple minutes.
Here we go.
But I think with the first blooper reel, it was just like humor that only we would have gotten. I mean, it was funny a little bit, but you had to
that was
know
sort of
us.
the point, though, because we didn't really have that many subscribers back then.
Right. But I'm thinking, like, as far as blooper reels, like when you see blooper reels in, like, big movies and other stuff, like, you could watch the blooper reel, not really see the movie, and the stuff would still be funny because they just get those
You see the
moments.
people screwing up, and you recognize that they're screwing up trying to do whatever they're trying to do.
Right. But for us, it was just like a lot of inside humor and channel humor that you wouldn't really get if you just came to a channel and you're like, oh, blooper reel, this might be funny, and it's just us making bad jokes that you wouldn't get, so it's not funny to you at all.
Some are good.
Yeah, some. Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Some were good, but I'm saying, like, that was first blooper reel, and then the second one was obviously much better, still one of my favorites. And then the third one was great and very long. I think that was almost 25 minutes. And then this fourth one, almost 20 minutes, but
We actually went through the
short
bloopers.
clips.
We went through them like a few months ago when we were trying to do it. We didn't get many in the last few months. If you look at the blooper reels, not much recent.
Yeah, the chair flip was actually the most recent, and that we recorded that maybe a week or two ago.
Yeah, but we looked through the bloopers and we were like not laughing. I don't know what was wrong with us. We had like
It might have been like 2 or 3 in the morning, and we were just not happy to be alive. So
yeah, we didn't find things funny. And then we looked at them again. I made Carl get the laptop out. We're like, we have to watch bloopers, and Gorby's like, and Carl's like, I don't want to do that shit. We sat there, and it was actually hilarious.
yeah, it's actually really good. We found some gems that we didn't see before, and it was. And the thing about this blooper reel that I like is that it's a lot of very short clips, but you get the point. And I think it's a little better organized than it was in the previous blooper reels. Like, some of them are all over the place, and even this one, like, some of them don't follow the. You can tell, like, that a lot of these were recorded at the same time, but they're different spots in the blooper reel, and I just feel like this one was organized just a little bit better. Like the whole coughing train, the take, like the 7 takes of us trying to do that quick.
So much on my bed
with Gorby and his faces, like it's just a lot of fun. I enjoyed this blooper reel a lot. So if you guys haven't seen it yet, definitely go check it out. It's one of my favorites yet. It's really funny. And on that note, I think we're done here. So stay tuned. We'll probably have more segments of this, like I said, on his channel, and we'll probably do another one on mine. Maybe go over two different archetypes on yours.
Thank God.
And another archetype on mine. Don't know which ones yet, so don't. I guess leave suggestions in the comment if you're actually still with us. And that's it. So, social links down below, Facebook, Twitter. I'm trying to use them a little bit more. Like I said, time is... I have less time than I had before now that with school starting, but I'm still trying to keep up with Twitter and all that. It's
we only record videos at 3 a.m.
Yeah, it's literally 3 a.m. right now. So, I think it's it. Social links below, Facebook, Twitter. All
like, comment, subscribe.
This guy, comment, subscribe, check out his channel for future segments. And he's touching himself. And on that note, we'll see you guys next time.
Peach. There you go.